I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off-road. The guy managed the group. He was like, what are you doing in this beautiful car? I'm like, I'm going off-road. He's like, are you sure? Because you can use one of ours. And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender. Hey, so normally I don't do an intro, but I'm about to interview one of my all-time favorite actors and comedians, Paul Reiser. He actually has 3 shows on TV right now, one on Netflix, one on Amazon, one on Hulu. We'll talk all about them. But I'm doing this intro because, as you could probably hear, my throat's a little bit sore. But even given that, I get so excited about these guests that I power through and I want to do the interview. And I'm grateful you're listening. So let's start the interview.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Choose Yourself Network. Today on the James Altucher Show.
It's also one of those things, though, you start off, and because you love it so much, you appreciate the subtleties of what's good, so you know you're bad. So you know you're bad for a really long time, and yet you pursue it obsessively. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, but it's interesting because my recollection is it's sort of what protects you when you're starting as a comic. I think you're protected by this embryonic ignorance that I think if you knew how bad you were, you wouldn't dare go up. Something is in denial or you're just not smart enough to know it. I remember at 17, 18, when I went on for the first time. I mean, I knew I wasn't going to be great because that's the first time, but I'm going to think, pretty good. This is okay. And then, you look back now and cringe. Oh, my God, really? I went out there? I knew nothing. You're protected with a sort of blind enthusiasm and ignorance of youth. And one of the things I love about stand-up is it's a moving target. It's like the horizon, you keep moving towards it and then it keeps moving and you get better and you say, as soon as I can do that, then I'll be made. And then you get to that point and go, there's so much more I have to learn. And you never ever feel like you've arrived in the best sense.
I'm so excited to have Paul Reiser here. Paul, I feel like I've been watching you on TV and movies since I was born, practically. Not to make you sound old, because you're not that much older than me, to be honest.
But it was interesting that your parents had the TV right there at your birth so that you could be indoctrinated.
It's true.
Into all the splendor of me.
It's true. By the way, I don't think TV is such a bad thing for little kids. I think it exposed them to thousands of stories at an early age.
Although I was watching, I saw a woman the other day with an infant, and the little baby must have been not even a year, and we're just staring into an iPad, and it was glowing on her face, and I just thought, it just looked wrong. You shouldn't be that focused on a thing that's shooting light at your head. So yes, TV's good, but I actually worry. Sometimes when I see infant, really, really young creatures with the electronic thing in their face, I went, probably not great. I like to start off with a really boring cautionary thing for babies, which is your demo, I understand.
Only babies listen to this. But don't you think people said this about radio and TV?
I don't know about radio, but I remember what they used to call the the boob tube. Right?
Yeah.
It's like for idiots. It'll make you stupid. It's like, well, what if you're watching Edward R. Murrow? What if you're watching, you don't.
Or I Love Lucy.
Yeah. Well, anything. I think, all things in moderation. My son just got this VR kit, and he puts it on his head, and it's really cool, and he made me do it. I'm, wow, it's really fun. But I'm thinking, this can't be good for the brain. You're just shooting stuff into your eyes and not reading a book.
I think so, unless the nature of storytelling changes. But first, I want
But it doesn't.
to
Go ahead,
introduce you a little bit.
Introduce me, because I'm not familiar with my own work.
First off, on TV, 2.5 Men. Probably most people know.
Never was on 2.5 Men.
Wait, what's the?
I was on a show called My Two Dads.
Oh, My Two Dads. I got confused.
So
Sorry about
there was
that.
no half.
Then Mad About You was your main thing. You're over 160 episodes of that. That's how I saw you every week on Mad About You.
After you were born.
After I was born. You were on Diner before that. That kind of kickstarted your career and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
You've been on, you were a stand-up. You were on Tonight Show with Johnny Carson many times, which led to, right now you have 3 series, one on Netflix, one on Amazon, one on Hulu. You're in Stranger Things. You're in Red Oaks on Amazon, and on Hulu, you created and wrote the amazing series There's Johnny, about kind of like Johnny Carson meets the Larry Sanders Show. Like I just love this show.
Oh, I'm so happy. Yeah, it's an odd thing to describe, and people say, "Well, what is it like?" I said, "Well, you have to see it." And almost to a person, everybody who I hear from go, "Wow, it's not what I expected." It's like, that's what I was telling you. It's hard to, because it's not quite a comedy. It's a lot of heavy drama, and it's certainly not a drama. But it's, and people said, "Oh, so it's Larry Sanders." I said, "No, it's not Larry Sanders at all. It's not."
Because Larry Sanders is not, like Johnny Carson's not really, nobody plays Johnny Carson.
Nobody plays him, and he's not really in it. It's not about him. But he's the backdrop, and the show takes place in his show, the show behind the scenes of his show. And as a kid, watching the Johnny Carson show, that always seemed like the coolest place to be. And there was a vibe about it that was very over the time, sort of the Playboy After Dark. It felt, like especially in the early 70s when he moved out to California, the Tonight Show felt like, well, it's just cool. People are sitting there drinking and smoking, and actors drop by and big stars drop by, and it just felt
like a party.
It felt like a party, and it's a very different feel than like, Jimmy Fallon has the Tonight Show now, and it's great, and he's really made it his own. But we're in a different point, and it was a more relaxed party. It was more about having people over, and you'd sit, and they were longer. They were 90 minutes for a long time, till I think through the early 70s. And so somebody would sit and they would chat for 30, 40 minutes. Like, well, you don't have that anymore. And guests would stay. So you'd be in a conversation with the people after you. That's not the way it is anymore. So it was a very different feel. But as a kid, that was where you wanted to be. And if you had any inkling, like I did, that, comedy might be where I'm heading, that was certainly your mecca. You watch every night. And Johnny loved comics. He really gave birth to a lot of people who probably would not have been understood elsewhere, like Albert Brooks and Steve Martin. It's like they're really
George Carlin.
Yeah, George Carlin for sure.
Ronnie Dangerfield. Ronnie Dangerfield was an amazing regular on Johnny Carson.
Yeah, for sure. And Johnny loved them all. Stephen Wright years later, but I mentioned Albert and Steve Martin because they were doing something so different, and it was so non-mainstream that if it didn't have somebody. I don't say mentoring, but championing them. Albert Brooks, I've heard, never, it wasn't like he worked out his stuff and then did it on The Tonight Show. He tried it on The Tonight Show. A lot of things, these brilliant off-the-wall things that he did for the first time on the show. And you'd see Johnny just, really eating it up. So he was a big enthusiast for comics, and he would always insist that the audience rise to that occasion. He always used to say, "I'm glad you're in a good mood tonight. Here's a young guy making his first appearance." And he always would say that. They always say, "I'm glad the audience is in a good mood tonight." And the audience is thinking, well, we're not particularly in a good mood, but we will be now because you told us to. So he really made it comfortable for newcomers.
I think also he had a natural stand-up way about him. Like, he certainly had the delivery. He certainly had the ability to kind of control the crowd. It was his crowd anyway because they're coming to see his show. So that gave him a little extra benefit. But he had the timing and the nuances to be a stand-up himself.
Oh, totally. And I was always sorry I never got to see him do stand-up because he would do it in Vegas for a while. And I never got to see him. And I remember hearing the appeal was, he was a little naughtier than he would be on TV. Would tell some off-color jokes and stuff. So that was appealing, the idea of seeing him.
But he was off-color on TV too. Like, you showed it in the series where he he's...
Well, one of the things, there were so many qualities that he had that made him unique and gave him the longevity. And one of those qualities, which is, he is that he straddled a lot of fences. He was hip, and yet he was also very comfortable. He was Midwestern, so the people in the Midwest were comfortable with the guy that they knew, and yet he was really into jazz, and he knew his music, and he certainly was an avant-garde comic. He knew his avant-garde comedy, but he made it. His show was welcoming to a wide spectrum. It wasn't anti-establishment. It wasn't ironic. It was just pure entertainment. And he straddled that line. He was very safe and very sort of conservative, but there was also a twinkle in his eye. There's a lot of sexual innuendo, and part of the fun in going back and look at these clips now, it's like, whoa, you wouldn't air that now. You just, whether it's making fun of and he'd have the actress on in the extra tight dress, and then he would do 3 or 4 jokes to Ed McMahon. Like, wow, that's really objectifying and not cool by today's standards.
How hard was it to get the archival footage that you aired?
That's what was one of the things from the beginning. My partner David Simon and I knew that we wanted to do, and we kind of thought, well, we'll just get those clips. And so to do that, we needed the cooperation of Carson Company, and who holds the license for all of those. And that's what actually took this show a long time to come to fruition. We started pitching it in like 2002 or 3 or something when Johnny was still around, and his company was they were very protective, and they hadn't even yet released DVDs, and so they were just sitting on it. Finally, when they said, "Yeah, come on, let's do it," then they gave us full access. And it's all, it's all archived. So you can put in any act, any word. You can say, how about Vietnam jokes? And you come up and here's the 400 Vietnam jokes or whatever. So that made the picking easier or easier to find. But it was also, sometimes it was an embarrassment of riches. Like, well, where do you go? Because sometimes we could just pick any clip and just say, whatever show they were making that week, and there it is, it's up on the monitors, and while our story is going on in the front. Other times we had a couple of episodes where we knew of a clip and we worked backwards. We said, okay, we love that clip. How do we get to that? And that was part of the magic and sort of the Forrest Gump quality of it is if our characters affect what's happening on the 40-year-old footage, that's really cool. So, we had
that was a great one where I'll let you describe.
The dog?
The one where he falls.
Yeah, we had it. And we totally fabricated that. We just, the kid runs out and has to hand something to Johnny, and he trips. And we just shot our guy tripping, and then we cut to Johnny looking down. But nobody actually tripped. We just totally fabricated that moment. But there was one episode we did, and we had remembered a commercial. They used to do a lot of spots, live spots, and Ed McMahon holding up, the product, and it was for Alpo dog food. And I remembered there was it wasn't an outtake, but it was just a funny, unplanned moment where he sells this wonderful meat product and meat byproducts, and he puts it out and the dog won't eat it. And so it looks pretty bad. The dog is running away from the food. And Johnny Carson came in and saved the day, and he just came down like a dog and walked on his knees and started pretending to eat the food and then humping Ed's leg. And it was really a totally, obviously improv moment. And it was... it took something that was going to go bad into something that was great and memorable. So we said, well, how do we work to that? So we wrote our story that the kid was in charge of the dog. And because why didn't the dog eat? There must have been a reason that dog didn't eat. Well, let's say that our knucklehead kid did something wrong.
And why did you, again, the 8th episode of this was a pure documentary about the Carson times. Why did you decide to also make a sitcom for the first 7 episodes? Why didn't you just focus on the
it's
documentary?
It's a 7-episode. That documentary is just sort of an ancillary thing, supplementary thing. It's a 7 episodes show, and I think the documentary you're talking about, which I actually recently saw, was just sort of, what do you call it? A supplement, basically, where a lot of comics were talking about what Johnny meant to them, and
It was great.
those years. And no, but the 7 episodes is exactly the show we had in mind, and it was always, like I said, it doesn't quite fall into a category, which is what I love about it. And most of the things that in my head when I write things, they're never quite a comedy, they're never quite drama. I like writing, and I like watching things that straddle those worlds.
Do you find studios want you to categorize this is a rom-com, this is a sitcom, this is a drama?
To some extent, but certainly those categories have blended and widened and grown since there's so many platforms and so many streaming places you can do it, that there are a lot of shows that would not have made it. You would not have seen. Stranger Things I don't think would have been on 10 years ago, even 6 years ago. There are places that you can do a 7-episode series. There's Johnny. If it turns out we only did this one season, it really holds up and it looks like a full arc. It looks like a movie. Went from one point and brings characters to another. But my goal is hopefully that we get to do some more.
I hope you do a second season. I want to keep following.
Yeah, thank you. We had great actors. I mean, and we had Jane Levy, who just startles me. She's so talented and just special. And Ian Nelson plays this,
Jane's Joy in there.
Jane Levy plays the character of Joy, who's this Beverly Hills raised, very complicated. Her father in the show, is a big Hollywood agent, and so she's been in show business, raised in show business, and with all the drama and complexities of that. And the other lead is Ian Nelson plays this kid Andy, who literally came off the farm in Nebraska, thinking he had a job because he sent away for a picture for his dad. His dad liked Johnny Carson, and they sent him a nice little form letter, which he misread as like, "Come on out, we welcome you. You have a job." So he got on a bus, and he gets out there and went, "Oh," and he doesn't have a job at all. But because he was such a good-natured kid, everybody took a shine to him. They kept him around. And
now let's reel it back a little bit in the sense that the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson was so important to every up-and-coming stand-up at that time, including you. Basically, if you got on Johnny Carson and then you got to sit down next to him, your career was supposedly set.
Yeah. It was definitely the stamp of approval. In a way that no show today can be. I mean, if you're just starting out, and you get on anybody, like Jimmy Fallon or Colbert or Conan, it's great, and it's a great feather in your cap, but it doesn't.
It gets you on the club set.
Yeah,
it does
moves
not
you
get
forward.
you a TV show.
Yeah, well, not that being on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson necessarily. There were instances where people rocketed to fame. Freddie Prinze, was seen on that, and boom, then he had a sitcom. It happened sometimes, but it certainly was a universal currency. I know my parents, were sort of scratching their heads like, why would you be a comedian?
What they want you to be?
Well, anything else. But, a normal job, and it's such a risky thing. There's no reason for anybody to think that they're ever going to make it. And from their eyes, and I get it, I understand it, now, as a parent, but so they were watching, he went to college and now he's going into the city and he's just hanging out at clubs making $4 and, and it just, there's no paycheck, there's no seemingly, no really sign of potential or that we don't see, like there are no benchmarks. You can go, are you up for the rate? Are you up for the next position? And, it's an unimaginable world to them. But once you're on the Johnny Carson show, they literally go, oh, okay, Johnny liked him. Look at that. We can tell our friends and relatives he's on the Tonight Show. But also when they literally see, on my first time, Johnny, I didn't go over to the couch, but he actually started to walk over and shake my hand, and then the camera's cut. I went, oh, I wish they'd show that. But just that movement that Johnny was, giving me the thumbs up and walking to shake my hand spoke volumes. They all went, whoa, Johnny.
Like, did agents call the next day?
Huh?
Did agents call you the next day?
No, I don't think I had that kind of impact, but it certainly was like graduating college. It's like, okay, I finished my, even more. It's like finishing your PhD. It's like, whew, okay, that's behind me. I am now officially one of the people who's been on Tonight Show. Because strangers will go, hey, I never heard of you. You ever done the Tonight Show? And when you can say yes, I go, okay. Still never heard of you, but I heard of that.
I mean, there's pros and cons to that, right? Like, right now, there's no one gatekeeper who could make or break you, which is a good thing, too. It's more up to the individual to kind of strive for success. And back then, I think you had to be on The Tonight Show, more or less.
I guess. I don't know that you had to be. And as I say, it certainly wasn't the case that being on there automatically opened up every door for you. But it was very widely seen, and it was
50 million viewers.
Yeah. I mean, yes. On any given night, he had much bigger numbers than what often considered a hit now, because there were fewer shows. But also, he was there, and there's a comfort factor. He was, things rarely stay put at all. Now, ball players don't spend their careers on a team, that you can grow up with. Johnny was there for 30 years, and so we literally grew up with him, and we literally went to sleep with him. You put it on and you fall asleep, and he used to joke about people are sleeping during me, or people having sex during me, or people not having sex because of me. He was integrated into your life, because this seems so obvious, but it's huge. That when in '72 there was no VCRs. We hadn't invented the recording, so you had to stay awake, and that concept is gone. Right? It's like you can't miss any show now. You say, hey, did you see Fallon? No, I'll watch it. I'll watch it later. I'll watch it on my phone
and
in
also,
the gym.
I think late night shows are clip driven. So they know that they could take the clips and put them on YouTube, and some of them will go viral.
And that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case. It was literally, if something wonderful happened, it was that water cooler moment that people always talk about. The next day, oh, did you see that? Oh, no, I missed it. Well, it's gone. You can't see it.
So what was that? And then I want to talk about Red Oaks also, but what was that initial appeal of stand-up? Like, what drove you into this thing that didn't have any benchmarks, that your family would be against, that was hard?
You know what? It's an interesting thing. I think you're sort of drawn to something, or you're not. And people sometimes, when young comics, well, how do you ask for advice? And I found myself thinking, I found myself offering a piece of advice somebody gave me once after college when I was thinking I was going to do something else, and they said, if you can do anything else, do it. That's how hard this is. And I remember in that case, I went, okay, forget it. I'm not going to do that. And for a comedian, it's like, I think you can't do anything else. You're drawn to it. When I was a little kid, I watched the Ed Sullivan Show. So I watched the Beatles. I didn't think I'm going to grow up and be a Beatle. I don't think I grew up at all thinking I'm going to be a rock and roll guy. I do remember watching the comics, and then that spoke to me at a different kind of level, and I wasn't able to put my finger on it. And then somewhere when I was about 15, it started just becoming more formed. I was, a big moment for me was when somebody introduced me to the 2,000-Year-Old Man records, Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner. That was sort of like the Rosetta Stone. Like, oh my goodness, that just went deep into my bones. But also, there were new emerging comics, so it wasn't necessarily the Alan King and Buddy Hackett, who I loved and I used to love watching, but suddenly you're seeing George Carlin, Robert Klein, people that are speaking to you on a more relatable level. Also, because I'm older, I'm not 8, now you're 15, 16. So, I don't know, it just always, it's sort of like it's something on a cellular level. It's just like you're drawn to it or you're not.
It's also one of those things, though. You start off, and because you love it so much, you appreciate the subtleties of what's good, so you know you're bad. So you know you're bad for a really long time, and yet you pursue it obsessively. Am I
and by
correct?
the way, make sure the audience understands when you say you're bad, you mean the generic you, the
generic
universal you. Yeah, well, but it's interesting because my recollection is it's sort of what protects you. like when you're in the womb, you're actually underwater, but you're given the tools to survive, even though you shouldn't be able to be living in water. Similarly, when you're starting as a comic, I think you're protected by this embryonic ignorance that I think if you knew how bad you were, you wouldn't dare go up. So you're something is in denial, or you're just not smart enough to know it. I remember at 17, 18, when I went on for the first time. I mean, I knew I wasn't going to be great because that's the first time, but I'm going to think, I'm pretty good. It's okay. And then, you look back now and cringe. Oh my God, really? I went out there. I knew nothing. You're protected with a sort of blind enthusiasm and ignorance of youth. And one of the things I love about stand-up is it's a moving target. It's like the horizon. You keep moving towards it, and it keeps moving. And like you get better, and you say, as soon as I can do that, then I'll be made. And then you get to that point and go, whew, there's so much more I have to learn. And you never ever feel like you've arrived in the best sense. I don't think, not that it makes you unsettled. It's just that you turn a corner and you go, oh yeah, there's a lot. Hopefully there's more levels. You can write better, you can edit better, you can write deeper, you can come up with something more meaningful than your first 10 minutes, which you're just happy to get a laugh. And and I
how important is meaningful? Because like you take, let's say, stand-up comedy, and you have everybody ranging from Stephen Wright to more modern comics who speak about, let's call it the truth in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And how important is meaningful in there?
It's a good question. I don't think it's a necessity. I think it's a personal thing. Stephen Wright is brilliant, and it's not,
super brilliant,
and it's not necessarily self-revelatory, and it's not necessarily meaningful, but those are beautiful crafted jokes. Each one, it's just like, wow. Rodney Dangerfield, nothing meaningful in there. Well, if you want, you can actually find some levels of reality of his miserable life and why he felt that I get no respect. It's like his
persona might be close to truth.
Yes, it came from a truth, but the joke, you're watching a joke master, and he was a master. So that's great. There's it's like music. It's like, Bach is great, and Springsteen is great, and hip hop is great. Like they have nothing to do with each other, but they'll each work on their level. So there's some guys that are, you can watch some comics that are deep and meaningful, not making you laugh, and so you may not care for them. Somebody else may go, wow, okay, I don't mind taking that little detour into the deeper thing. So it's all personal. I mean, I know for me, you never want to set your goal and say, I want to be meaningful. No, your good job is to go up there and make people laugh. But I know from my own inner, my own compass, it's like if I hit a bit that's a little closer to the truth, it just feels different. Like, oh man, that one felt good. And it got a deeper laugh. So when you do something that's really personal, and I don't know that I could have done this at 25, but now you talk about something about being married, or you share something that's universal, people get it, and it's deeper. So if you hit it right, and you do a really smart, funny, insightful joke that's true about being married or having kids and fear of having kids and fear of messing up your kids, it just already is deeper than the best joke about the weather that you can come up with. The weather may be quicker and funnier, but it's not ringing true. And I don't know that it all has to be. So if I'm doing an hour or whatever set, you pepper it in. And some stuff I go, well, that's I'm getting a little bit more deep here, and that's just a funny, silly ass joke.
And how? I have so many questions about this, but you've been one of the biggest TV stars of all time. You have all these shows that you're still either starring in, writing in, creating. Do you feel at your core, though, there's that stand-up, that at heart you're a stand-up comedian?
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because I that's really all I thought I wanted to be. When I was in college and I got the bug for it, and I would go to the clubs in the summer, and then after college, I just said, well, that's what I'm going to do. And I wanted to be a stand-up. I didn't have this thing of I want to be an actor, I want to be get a TV show, none of that. And my idols as kids were my idols, but the people that I was drawn to were comics. I didn't love, Laurence Olivier. I loved George Carlin and David Brenner, Robert Klein, and Buddy Hackett, and Mel Brooks, and Woody Allen. They were and Cosby, and they were all comics. That's who and the Beatles on the other side. But I never wanted to particularly need to be an actor. And so when things started happening, suddenly I got a job in Diner, and so I guess I'm an actor. And then, that led to all these other things.
How'd you get the job in Diner?
That was just a
Great
freak
movie.
Huh? Yeah, that was literally just they were casting, and I was literally walked into an office with my friend who was auditioning, and I was hanging out and got that. But it was a crazy little accident. But what I was going to say is that in my head, when I got busy with all these things, and certainly with Mad About You, which is 92 to 99, in my head, I was like, I got to get back to stand-up. I always meant to. And so I was doing it steadily from 82 to 90. And then when I started developing Mad About You in 91, it just got put on the back burner, but not by design, just because I was busy and distracted. So I always had this thing, I got to get back to it. And it took me longer than I would have thought, because I thought, I don't want to do it half-assed. I don't want to just go up and, do my act from 15 years ago. Let me, write new stuff. And it always, every day I go, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. It's like anything yet you intend to do in life. And then finally I went, okay, just
It's like
do
me
it.
calling back my girlfriend.
Yeah, you got it.
I'll do it tomorrow.
I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do it. But, and I was just saying this to somebody else about all my major decisions in my life, when I think about it, were never because it is the time to do it, but rather, hey, you know what, jackass, it ain't going to happen unless you do it. It's like, it's time to, and now let's get married. Okay, now let's have a kid. It's like, I don't know, is this a better time? And for stand-up, it's like, just do it. And so about 5 years ago, I just sort of jumped in the pool, or waded into the pool, and I went down to this club in L.A. where a Comedy and Magic Club where I used to work, and I came down and did 5 minutes, and I was like, oh, and it was very odd, because the audience was like, oh, we know that guy from TV. Okay, nice to see you. What are you doing here? And stuff's okay. It's not that funny. I'm going, I haven't done this, and it took a long time. It took a good year to get to the point where I felt I can perform and do an hour or sell
That's
a ticket.
amazing.
It goes away.
What are the skills that you think, like people think, oh, you need a good sense of humor and then you're a comedian. It's not true at all.
No.
What are some of those skills that you had to relearn?
Well, first of all, I think all comics, some people say it takes 10 years till you figure out who you are, right? So, and that changes. So in 15 years since I've been on stage, now I'm married and have kids, so I'm a different person, and I've been on TV, so I'm a different person. So it's finding out who you are and what your voice is and what feels right to you, and what, sometimes you do a joke and go, okay, that was full of shit. That was not me. I got to laugh, but it doesn't feel right. And it's writing, it's editing, it's memory. Like that part of my brain. It's like, wow, okay, yes, I can memorize a script, but you're breaking it down, right? You're doing, 4-minute scene, a 2-minute scene. Oh, do an hour. And it's not really memory, because, and then the other piece, the last piece to kick in, which was a skill only usable in stand-up, is that fluidity of going, all right, I'm going on this bit, but my back of my brain, I'm thinking of the next bit. And you know what? Instead of that, let's do number 24. Let's go into that. And then also leaving yourself open to, let's explore that. I don't even have a joke there, but that struck me as funny. And so the ability to sort of think on your feet and move, that was the last piece that kicked in.
But there's sub-skills to that, though, too, right? Because you have to understand in microseconds what is the crowd looking at?
Yeah.
How does the crowd perceive you? How are you feeling that day?
Yeah, and it's a very alive feeling. I mean, you're very, and that's the high, that's the chart, and I love it. And I didn't realize. So going back to your original question, like when, what is it that appeals to you? It's like I wasn't. As I said, I had this vague thought of I want to get back into doing it, but until I actually did it, I didn't remember how much I was actually missing it. I'm like, I can just, this, yes, getting a laugh is great. And also the idea of a success, to think of something at 4 and say it at 8, and it gets a laugh, or it doesn't get a laugh. Well, it's funny when I said it to my friends, like, well, now it's different. They're not your friends. Now you have to write it. Now you have to make it a joke. Now you have to put it in a context. Like, well, you know what, that works well if you're talking about this subject, but maybe it really goes in that other area. So it's not a bit, so you have to find the truth, find what is the context of each piece of material.
Well, what do you mean find the context?
Well, okay. For instance, you do a bit. Okay, here's a sort of broad stroke example. You do a bit if you're walking on the street and you trip, right? So there's the joke. And so one thought when you think of where do I put this bit, you might go, oh, I have other bits about walking on the street. I go, well, no, but it's really about the tripping. It's about embarrassing. So it really goes with the chunk about being embarrassed. It's not about the chunk about walking on the street. So it's like, what's the real joke here? What is it about? And then sort of putting things together, and you put these little molecules together, and then they become a little chunk, and then moving things around, and watching. It's sort of like watching children grow. When you watch a bit find its legs, and it becomes good, and it wasn't good in the beginning, and now it's good. And there's also the opposite. There's some bits that like, well, that worked the first 10 times I tried it, and now it doesn't. What has happened? Did it become less funny? And you sort of chase these ghosts, and that's exciting. It's frustrating, but it's exciting.
I think that's an important one too, because if something worked 10 times in a row and then it doesn't, is it the crowd? Are you trying to replay the last 10 times?
Yeah, it could be. And sometimes you have to, it's sort of like taking apart a car. Not that I've taken apart a car, but I know people do it. You have to deconstruct it and go, okay, what is, and sometimes you're overthinking it. And it's like, I know there are a couple of bits that I do that are long. They're 5-minute hunks that have lived on stage exactly as I did them the first time, which is exactly how I first said it or wrote it. And that's sort of an anomaly. That doesn't usually happen. And other times you're chasing it. You don't know, and that's the mystery of it. Sometimes it's the audience. Okay, that wasn't a great audience. Sometimes it's as subtle as, oh, I mumbled that one key word, or I've looked at tape. And if I'm doing a short set and I'll watch a tape, I go, I was looking down. It's funnier when they can see your face. Don't look down on that word. It's like, oh, there it is. That's why it didn't work. And sometimes it's just like, everything has a life. And sometimes a bit just like it was good for a while, and now you've outgrown it, or you don't really inside really believe it's as funny as you thought it was, or you don't believe it. Sometimes you just outgrow a bit. You're beyond it.
And I would say the stand-up has helped a lot in the acting. So take your role in Mad About You and take the role you play in this recent, Amazon show, Red Oaks. The Red Oaks show is brilliant. It's almost like Caddyshack in a way. I don't know how you would describe it.
It's Caddyshack meets The Graduate. I mean, it's not as farcical as Caddyshack, but it takes place at a country club. But it's a really sweet, nostalgic piece, which was written by Greg Jacobs, and which was based on his a guy who that was his memory. He grew up and he was a young tennis pro at a country club, and you did a lot of growing up at that point in your life.
So you play this role, the president of the club, Mr. Getty, and even though it's a very different role than the role you play in Mad About You, I think there's still and it's not necessarily a funny role. There's still a comedic influence in the kind of the commitment to the role, the slight inflections and nuances you use, so that I don't know. It's funny to me watching it.
It's not like I'm unrecognizable. It's certainly not playing me, but you hopefully you bring yourself to the role. Even like you think of like the greatest actors, like I like seeing De Niro in every role he's doing. There's a big slice of De Niro because he's great, and there's no question he's a great actor. But that's. That thing, that Robert De Niro thing. Well, there's that, there's that Al Pacino thing. There's that Denzel Washington thing. It's like, it's a great actor and he's different in every role, but there's enough of what you like at the core that brings you back. Getty, the role was really fun because he's very self entitled and pompous and unjustifiably arrogant. I mean, he's this big fish in his little pond. So it was great to not worry about being nice. It's like, oh, you get to be an asshole. You can.
But it was well written because you see pretty early on, like episodes 2 or 3, where he wants to share with this tennis protege.
Which was fun. Yeah, he comes off instantly as this gruff guy, the boss, and then you go, oh, he's actually cares about his daughter. He really cares for his wife. He really is trying to help this kid, even if he's doing it in a little bit of a arrogant way or for selfish reasons.
Do you think because TV has become so granular, like there's all these outlets, and some of these outlets like Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, they can basically create 1 million shows. There's no time that they're on.
Right.
Do you think that, I mean, obviously it's changed television. There's hardly any series I could think of now that goes like 5-6 seasons. How does that affect how you look when you look at a role that you're going to play or a show that you're going to create? What are you thinking about? It's not going to last 5 seasons, and you don't know, and much fewer people will see it.
Also the numbers are smaller. You know, now a season can be 10 episodes or 8 episodes,
right.
Or in Johnny is 7. Sometimes I'm writing a screenplay now, and I had this idea for a story that I really liked, and I thought that's a movie. It's a movie. It's not something that needs to be carried out and extended. And then some ideas go, well, that's a show, and like there's Johnny. Certainly felt like that's a TV show because it takes place at a TV show and there's a new thing every day. And it also gives you the range, the ability to tell a story and watch characters grow over longer periods of time. I don't necessarily, I think you vaguely plan, let's say 5 years. And okay, are there 5 years worth of shows here? If so, then you got to, then you can answer that question when the studio says, well, why should we invest in this? Is it going to be are there 5 years worth of shows? And, but it also has to work if there's only 2, if there's only 3. I mean, there's Johnny. I think, as I said, it really plays in one season very well, but I can't wait to dig in and show how these characters, where they go in season 2 and 3.
Gosh, I hope there's a season 2.
Make it happen, man. Just call Hulu and say you demand it.
And do you feel like all this movie talent now is moving into TVs? Like, I forget whether it was Red Oaks or There's Johnny, but you had the directors like Hal Hartley, Amy Heckerling.
Yeah, it's on Red Oaks. And David Gordon Green, who did both. David Gordon Green was a producer on and director on Red Oaks, and he directed There's Johnny, produced that with me.
I mean, Hal Hartley is like one of my favorite movie directors
Really?
of all time.
Yeah, he's great.
And he's directing these TV episodes.
Yeah, because it's not like they're suddenly doing I Love Lucy. They're doing little movies. They're little half-hour movies, and then you put 8 of them together. It's like, oh, now it's a 3-hour movie. It does hold up. What's interesting at Red Oaks is that each of the directors brought their own flavor to it, and they're all a little different, but somehow they all complement each other, and they're not jarringly different than they're not breaking the frame. They all work together.
Let's stop to take a quick break. We'll be right back. I am so grateful to everyone who's been listening to this podcast. I'm 300 podcasts in now. It's almost unbelievable to me. This podcast has been all about peak performance, how the best people in the world in any field, doesn't matter the field, artists, athletes, writers, musicians, businessmen, entrepreneurs, astronauts, politicians, whoever, how all these people have achieved peak performance. I've learned so much from them. I hope you have as well. But listen, what would really help me, please subscribe on either Apple Podcasts or wherever it is you get your podcasts. This is so important. This is what keeps the show going. So please do it. It's the one favor I ask, so we keep this podcast totally free and I keep churning them out and we keep on getting the best guests. Meanwhile, you can also check out show notes at jamesaltucher.com/podcast, or you can sign up for my newsletter at jamesaltucher.com. Any way you want to do it, I am so happy that you read and listen and learn from what I'm also learning at the same time. So thanks again. So you said before, it seems like a lot of your career, you were taking chances. Like you got into stand-up, nobody wanted you to do it, like in your family and so on. Then you took a chance, obviously, with TV. No one knows if a show's going to do well or not. You did great with Mad About You. Did the success of Mad About You, I mean, how life-changing was that? Obviously, it was incredibly life-changing, but what happened? when did you realize, oh my gosh, this is something big?
You know, you're right. You never know, and that's sort of just the MO of anything, TV or films. You write it, or you have, and sometimes you create something because you really want to see it, and sometimes people go, well, what would be a hit, and you aim for that, and it's like, and that was never my thing. I mean, Mad About You, I was approached by the studio. It's like, come you create something for yourself. And I thought, well, the only thing I'd want to do, which was what I was doing in my act, was a lot of relationship stuff. And I thought, well, okay, is there a show about that? And make it really true and small in the sense of, you know, those little moments. And ultimately, that's really what made it work. But so, you know, we made a pilot, and I was really happy with the script, and the pilot came out great. And meeting Helen and Helen Hunt and that relationship after we shot it, I went, wow, that felt remarkably good and right. There was something I felt great about. So I was pleasantly surprised when it was picked up, because even if it comes out great, that's not what necessarily determines going forward. It's like, what's the network need? Do they have a place for it? Do they need a show about a young couple? And so we got to make it, and suddenly you're in another world, and then, you're making shows, and then it's the reality of that, oh my gosh, we got to come up with another episode, and you got to do 22, 23.
162 episodes all together.
Yeah. And so, and then you realize, then you're into that machinery where like, the network is sending you to New York, and you're promoting it, and you're seeing it's sort of a mind, it's sort of a trip to realize, so it's not just for ourselves. This is being shown in Cleveland and Detroit and San Francisco and Seattle and everywhere. It's all, this is on television. Okay. And that is a sort of a bracing reality. And then, of course, you start getting feedback, and it felt good, and it felt like we were doing good shows. And then you start seeing, people are hearing about it, and people are talking about it. And then, you go out in the world and like, hey, you're the guy from this show. It's like, wow, okay, that's a new world. So it certainly changed our lives, and it gave me a certain comfort level. But the other reality is, all that aside, your job is exactly the same. Now you got to go write another script. You got to write another episode. Now you have to, and the same as stand-up. It's like, okay, what can we do bigger and better and deeper and smarter and funnier, and how do we keep making this fresh and new and for ourselves? And if you make it fresh for yourselves, like the bit, it'll probably ring true for an audience. And
do you think the skills translate in the sense that you're writing on stand-up, like, what is the audience going to relate to? Does that help you
write
and craft an episode?
Yeah. I think, you come up with an idea for an episode, or something happens in your life, you go, that's a funny area. So you bring it in, and then the writers will all sit around, and you have other writers throwing in their ideas, and they go, what happened at home with my wife? And she said, my husband. And then boom, you're throwing these, it becomes something. It's a much more collaborative process. And you start to, you have the audience in mind, and like, okay, what story are we telling? And like, are they going to like this? Is that going to seem like, it's kind of not a cool thing if your character does that or she does that? But one of the other things, going back to when I got back into stand-up a few years ago, something that I had not anticipated that was such a refreshing change was how non-committee it was. And from a TV show to movies, everything is so labor-intensive and people-intensive, right? So, and then conditional, because you have an idea for a show, but then you have to pitch it, and then somebody has to buy it. And then by the time they buy it and they make it, it's 1,000 meetings and 1,000 nips and tucks, which are some help, some don't. But it can be years. In the case of There's Johnny, from initial idea till it was available to the public was 15 years. So whereas stand-up is so immediate, and that the lack of clutter was really refreshing and appealing to me. It's like, wow, I can just say what I want, and I can fall on my ass, and I may not get a laugh, but that's all right. I'll survive. And sometimes that's funny. As if you grew up watching Johnny Carson, you can get a laugh on how you didn't get a laugh. Can be funny.
I think that sometimes is another sub-skill of comedy.
Yes.
Which is like in between two failed bits, you can often have the funniest riff.
Right. And as you said before, your brain is monitoring. So sometimes you do a bit and it misses. And if it's really glaring, or if you offended, or you can just hear it and you go, well, maybe I should comment on it. And you can get a great laugh off of, wow, I messed that up. And then they're fine, move on. Other times, though, you go, you know what? It only failed in your mind. You were expecting this level of laugh, and it got a little less, but they don't know that. They don't know what you were thinking. They're just going, oh, he's talking, right? So you have to make that judgment. Did I just stumble, or did I just not measure up to my own hopes and dreams for that joke?
Or it could be they were low energy. They were waiting for a different type of punchline.
Yeah, and you can't, and that's gauging an audience. Sometimes there's a great audience that's not particularly vocal. Doesn't mean they're not liking you. It just means, okay, and that's just what they have to offer that day. And other audiences, they're like too electric, and you go, wow, okay, this stuff ain't that funny, but God bless you.
I recently saw Brian Regan in a talk, and he said his goal is to make himself laugh on the stage, and he doesn't care as much about the audience. How
Really?
true do you think that is?
It doesn't seem, I don't know Brian, but he's great, and he certainly seems like almost the definition of a crowd pleaser. Like he does. I guess I'm sure he didn't say that in an arrogant way. There are people who can say that arrogant, like, I don't care about them. It's like, well, yeah, you do, because that's how you know if you're doing well, if they're laughing and if they're showing up. But yes, there is a piece of that that's true. It's sort of a hollow feeling. Sometimes you hate yourself. You do a joke that, I don't even like this joke, but they seem to like it. And, I'm having there's a couple of bits that I've been playing with that I had this lofty goal. I'm trying to take this somewhere and see if there's something. And when I say deep, I don't mean profound and dramatic or existential. Just like it's about something, I don't know, a little more interesting and a little more meat on the bones. And there are two bits, and I can't even remember what they are now, but I noticed it got a laugh very early on, but for the wrong reason. I was like, oh, you think I was meaning that? And I went, well, now I guess that ship has sailed. I don't know how to get past. They're already laughing at A, so I can't even get to B, C, and D, because it's like, there's one joke that I was trying to go for something and it sounded vaguely sexual, and they laughed at the sexual innuendo. I went, no, I didn't mean it. Boy, okay. All right. Sorry.
And do you then work with that?
It's it's like a cookie coming out of a machine. It's like, you know what, that cookie's not going to be any better. Wait for the next cookie. Just ship it, put it in a bag. They seem to like that. That's my dilemma. It's like, maybe do a little more homework. The more noble journey is like, you know what? I know that they're getting a laugh there, but let me see if I can, or maybe not even throw away that laugh, but don't stop there. Where did you want to go? And sometimes you have the ambition, and sometimes you go, I'll take it. That's fine. That's a fine laugh. I'll take it.
This is a really bad example. I'll just give you one of my examples.
Go ahead.
Sometimes I'll do poorly, and I'll wait to see how the MC describes me, and they're usually funnier than me, and then I'll incorporate that into my next set. What they just said, oh, well, that guy is blah, blah, blah.
Well, that's what I was saying before. It takes, you're just starting, and it takes a long time till you know who you are up there. I remember, this is probably true of everybody, you start doing it because you've seen other people do it, right? So you can't help but bring that with you on stage. And I remember when I started, I probably, I was probably doing a very bad, not intentionally, but a bad impression of Woody Allen meets Robert Klein meets David Steinberg or something. It was like it was all in there. And then, I would say for me, it was probably 5-6 years before I started stumbling onto a little bit more of my style, but also, that construction seems to work for me, or that kind of feels more truthful, or that bit is more interesting. And for me, it's like when I started talking about relationships, and I'm sure this is true for most comics, it's like, it's going to be funnier and deeper and better and more true just because that matters. And it's
you start having more fun on stage?
Yeah, and also for me, it became a place to work it out personally. Like, I know what mad about you. It was a great luxury that we had this show. So you have a fight, you have an argument with your wife that doesn't go well. Well, then you rewrite it, and then you can explore and go deeper. And by the way, you'll come up with a funny line when you have 12 writers.
And then you got divorced?
And then we got divorced. But there were times that, especially this last round, when I was last couple of years, and I would go out and I would just, if something was, I go, hey, listen, this is the argument I got into with my wife today. And I'm not trying to throw her under the bus, but I got to share. And will the audience laugh? So I'm going to go, okay, thank you. So I'm not crazy, right? She was a little bit nuts there, but not me. And you get they're laughing because they're going, okay, there's another guy going through the same argument. We've had that. That's why they're laughing, because they go, yeah, we recognize that. But at the same time, I'm on stage going, thank you for laughing, because now you're making me feel better. So we're both getting the validation of having somebody else agree with you. But it was a place, what I was trying to say, it was a place to work it out. That sometimes it's not just a comedy bit. It's like, why is this so funny? But suddenly a fight that was a genuine fight or an argument at home, you can laugh at it. Literally, I can do it on stage and go, okay, you know what? Now that I've talked about it, it doesn't bother me as much.
But now what I wonder is, because there's a couple of sub-skills there, are you found something you think is relatable, because it was funny to you, maybe the audience will relate to it. Then do you try to construct a punchline or some sort of reversal, or do you just go out there and using your own skills of inflection and crowd control and all these things you've built up in your decades as a stand-up, do you make it funny for the audience?
I think it's both. A lot of times you have an idea, something makes you laugh, and your friend goes, oh, that's funny. And then you try it on stage and go, well, it's not funny on stage. Or if it is, you haven't found out how to do it yet. Some things only exist in one form. It's a funny idea. It doesn't make it a funny movie. It's like a lot of, in LA, somebody sees something or hears something, oh, that'll be a great movie. I go, no, it's not a movie. It's just something that happened. Leave it alone. I used to joke, like, you see that sunset? It's a beautiful sunset. That could be a movie. No, it's not a movie. It's just a beautiful moment. Leave it alone. So some moments should just be funny observations, and sometimes there might be something there. And the skill, you say, well, I don't know, can you extend it? Can you put it with the other bits? And you suddenly, I have another bit where I was talking about something like that, and you sort of explore it. I mean, as I was saying, a couple of bits that I have that, in both cases, are actually conversations / arguments / head-scratching conversations that I've had with my wife that I literally brought on stage unadorned. I didn't write a thing, and I got a laugh. And I haven't had the nerve or the desire to touch it. I'm like, you know what? It's working. That's exactly what happens. And in the back of my head, I'm going, I didn't make up a word of this. I swear. But I knew it was a funny conversation, but it happens. The reason it was funny, and the reason it was funny to share, is like, yeah, because underneath that are all these layers. Like, well, this is what your wife is thinking. This is what you're thinking, and it relates to. So people in the audience are going, yeah, I so get that, and like, yes, we're with you, and that's a funny bit. And then there are other bits that go, I just made this up. This is really silly, and it's so it's a mixture. But you find yourself. So when you're saying, you find out what somebody else says about you. Yeah, that's informative too. It takes you, and as I said before, I don't think it ever ends. I think you're constantly, hopefully, evolving, right? And you're constantly thinking, where does this go? And this worked for the first 5 years. And some of it is craft, and some of it is craft in performing and craft in writing. And then there's another part of it that is who you are becoming as a person. And probably not going to be the same at 20 as you are at 30 and 40 and 50 and 60.
And still seems like stand-up, the skills of that lend itself to everything, whether it's your acting, your writing. I was thinking when I was watching There's Johnny, I was thinking about something, and Red Oaks, something Harold Ramis said about Caddyshack. He said Caddyshack was originally written for these kids who were caddies, but they weren't comics. So ultimately, the movie revolved around Chevy Chase, Ronnie Dangerfield, Bill Murray, these people who were real comics and comedic actors because they drove the film. Mm-hmm. Do you think with Red Oaks and There's Johnny, there's not as many actors there who have comedic backgrounds, and I don't know. What were your feelings on that, or what Harold Ramis said?
Well, I'm not sure what yeah, sometimes you need comic actors to make stuff that's not funny.
Like you and Mad About You and Helen Hunt, of course, drive the series, but you're the comedic actor there.
Well, but I think we're both comedic. I mean, she does so much, that's not comedic, but she's really funny, and this is why it worked, and this is why when I met her, I went, oh, she'd be great for this. I met her non-professionally. She was a friend of my wife's friend, and we had a dinner party, and when I was working on the script for Mad About You, and I left the party, and I said to my wife, I said, what about her? She goes, she's great. And it's like, yeah, because she's smart, she's funny, she was just neurotic enough, but obviously really blazingly smart and thoughtful, and so it's like, yeah, that's going to be a fun marriage, and we over the years developed our own rhythm, our joint rhythm. That was the two of us, and there was a married couple that it felt right, and it's still to this day. If we get together, it's like we just kind of fall into that. It's because we've been friends for 25 years. But in There's Johnny, there's certain comedy chops. Like we have 4 actors who play the writers, and who play Johnny's writers, and they're all comics.
I didn't know that.
Andrew Schultz, Nate Smith, who was also in Red Oaks, and who plays like the very straight-laced leader of the group, and Daniel Strauss. I don't think Daniel. I don't.
Oh yeah, Andrew Schultz actually.
Yeah, Andrew Schultz.
He performs uptown.
And then Daniel Strauss and David Hoffman. I think David Hoffman was in like improv groups, and Daniel Strauss I think as well. They weren't stand-ups, but they're really funny guys, and they all have very funny, different, very distinctive flavors of funny. Andrew Schultz plays this very New York street guy, and he's just funny. And so
plus Tony Danza's
and
a
Tony
great comedic actor.
Well, but it's interesting. Tony is really funny, but he's not trying to be funny. And in fact,
he's hilarious though.
Yeah, because he's hilarious because he's playing a real guy. So there are moments that kill me in the show where, like when there's a scene where he plays the Johnny's producer, Fred DeCordova, and there's a scene where Jane Levy comes in, Joy, and she comes to complain that she got the wrong paycheck. She got her colleague's paycheck, and I noticed that he does the same job as me, but gets twice as much. And he's looking at her like, yeah, and like he literally doesn't see it. And she goes, it's not fair. And his head sort of cocks. Goes, it's not what? It's not fair. That's not a thing. It's fair. And what's funny is his confusion. The character is like, this is all new. A woman saying that they should be paid more. Wow, that's crazy talk. And he's not going for a joke. He knows it's funny in his bones. And there's one scene a couple of times where he just has such great chops from all these years that he can go into that. And a couple of times we used it. We said, yeah, just that really crisp kind of sitcom trained timing, which will
still talking.
Yes, it's still talking. Yeah, and he just has that in his bones. But so, like for instance, one of the writers, Nate Smith, he plays in Red Oaks, he plays Chip, the golf guy, the golf caddy guy, and he's the head writer of our 4 writers, and he's really funny and like in a lot of flavors. He's very physically funny and he's witty and he's fast. The character, though, that we wrote for him is the straight-laced guy. And there are guys who are terrific comedy writers, can sit down and write 15 jokes for Johnny Carson, but you look at them and there's nothing funny about them. Their brain works. They know how to write Johnny jokes. And the character was the grown-up in the group. And I've been so impressed that he sat on his hands. He sat on his comedic chops to make this character work. It's like, I'm thinking, I know you got something funny to say, but your character wouldn't be funny. And ironically, to me, that's even more funny. Like when you see comics get together and somebody really says something funny, they'll go, yeah, funny. It's not that they're trying not to laugh. They're just going to another plane where they go, yeah, good, funny. And that was something that was more real and wanted to capture. But, yeah, but you see Tony Danza, who he's one of these guys. He's so appealing. Because he's just an easygoing guy, and people I see, I'm out in the street with him, people just flock to him, people recognize him, or even if you don't, he's just an easygoing guy, and he's a singer and dancer, and he's funny, but he's also just grown. You think over the years, and he's become this really gorgeous actor where he's not playing Tony Ninn. He's playing this guy, Freddie DeCordova, who has a very different speech pattern, a very different way of speaking, and he nails it. And he's just, it's exciting to see somebody, as again, over the years, just continue to evolve. And when the casting director, I had no idea who I was thinking of for this role, because he's the only one that's a real person. Fred DeCordova was the actual person. And the casting director called me and said, "What do you think of Tony Danza?" I went, "That's brilliant. Wow." I didn't have anybody in mind, but that's brilliant. And luckily he said yes, because he's great in it.
You know, the shows are great. So there's Johnny, such a great. I didn't grow up watching Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
Right.
I was Letterman, Leno, and whatever.
But I always, it's an interesting thing in talking about and promoting the show. People who love Johnny, remember Johnny, are intrigued because like, oh great, we love Johnny. But I keep having to remind people, you don't need to know anything about Johnny.
It's so true.
It's nothing to do with Johnny. It's just the backdrop. If you like him, there it is. But if not, don't worry about it.
I mean, it's a great sitcom. I want the second season. When do you find out if there's going to be a second season?
Then you say sitcom. It's like, well, is it a sitcom? Is it people say it's a dramedy? It's a great show, is what I say. I don't know. I think somewhere in the new year, because we're at the end of the year here. It's really up to you. You have to get everybody in America to watch There's Johnny, to get Hulu, and hopefully they'll say they'll do it.
We're trying, and then there's Red Oaks, which you have a
that's sort of done.
In.
Yeah, and that was we just finished the third and final season, but. Again, they may say, well, let's just do like a few, because it was left open-ended enough that we certainly could go back. But it's there's nothing wrong. When you get to do a couple of seasons of a show, it's like, that's enough. I don't need to stay with it for 12 years, because sometimes 12 is too many.
And then, of course, Stranger Things has become this iconic Netflix show right now. So that's huge. And then, everything else you've done. You've written several books. We haven't talked about those. Babyhood, Couplehood, Fatherhood. And you should do a stand-up special on Netflix.
Okay. I'm out there, and I think I'm doing more stand-up than I actually am. Because in my head, I'm always thinking about it, and I'll go out like every other weekend. And then I heard somebody talk about it. It was like some podcast, and they were talking about they had seen my show, and I go, it was really fun because he doesn't do that many shows. Like, it's a special day. I went, I don't? I thought I do. It's like, no, I guess I don't. But, that's always the most fun. And, I get to do... in the middle of these great fun projects, get to go out and do stand-up in the middle. And they all kind of ultimately feel like they're of a piece. When I go out of the audience, when I go on stage, there's this relationship. Like most of the people who are coming and buying tickets, like, they probably seen Mad About You. They probably read the books. And we have this sort of relationship. It's like, let's jump into it. How you been? It's like, and we got married when you got married, and now we're all a little older. And so there's this nice relationship, and it's a nice feeling.
Well, thanks again, Paul, for joining me on the show.
Thank you.
I highly encourage people to watch There's Johnny, Red Oaks, Stranger Things, read your books. I
don't even know if you have to tell people to watch Stranger Things. They seem to have found it.
Yeah, they found it. Okay, so watch There's Johnny.
There's where you want to put your promotional value.
Show. There's history. There's great writing. You're not even in it until the documentary portion, but it's a great show. I highly encourage people to watch it. And thanks again, Paul, for coming on the show.
Thank you, man. Thanks for all your diligent homework. And good luck, yes. I look forward to the day that you don't have to wait to hear what the MC says about you.
Yes.
You tell the MC what you think about him. How about that?
Exactly.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thanks. And if you like this episode, subscribe to The James Altucher Show wherever you found us, and hope to see you again.
For more from James, check out The James Altucher Show on the Choose Yourself Network at jamesaltucher.com and get yourself on the free insiders list today.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. oracle.com/advance.